Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mallory Wood, Director of Marketing at mStoner, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's webinar, The Time of Their Lives, Lifetime Relationships and Engagement in Higher Education. I just want to do a quick audio check to make sure you can hear me. So if a couple people could use the raise your hand feature or send me a message or tweet to me, whatever method of communication you want to use so that we know I'm coming through loud and clear, I would absolutely appreciate it. All right, great. Thanks, everyone, for doing that. I have a few housekeeping items before I introduce our presenters and get you into today's webinar, and we'll run through them really quickly. First of all, today's webinar is going to be recorded. So by the end of this week, you'll receive an email with a link to view the recording in case you want to review any of the information that we present today. You can also share that link with your colleagues if they were unable to attend the webinar. And we'll be posting the recorded webinar to our YouTube channel, the mStoner blog, and EDUniverse this week as well. Second, our next free webinar, Connect Your Own Dots, Social Media Integration as a Best Practice for Marketing and Communications, will be led by Susan Evans. We've already sold out the available registration slots for our December 4th webinar, so we are actually going to offer it again on Thursday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you head over to the mStoner blog after this webinar is finished, you'll see that there is going to be a post magically appearing, and you'll be able to sign up. And finally, during the webinar today, you can use the chat feature to ask questions. We have also saved about 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, and so if for any reason we don't get to your question, Fran will definitely follow up with you on the mStoner blog this week with some answers. But you could also join me in the back channel or tweet questions to the hashtag LEM Higher Ed. That's LEM for Lifetime Engagement Management, Higher Ed. So you can certainly ask questions that way, and I really hope you'll join me on Twitter. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's presenters, Fran Zablocki and Rob Zinkin. Fran is a strategist at mStoner, where he works with educational institutions around the world to help them realize their strategic web communication goals. Before mStoner, Fran worked for 9 years in many different areas of higher education, including marketing and student affairs at Nazareth College, the Alumni Relations Office at SUNY Geneseo, and in admissions for SUNY Buffalo. As Vice Chancellor for External Affairs, Rob Zinkin leads a team of professionals at Indiana's Offices of Alumni Relations and Campus Events, Campus Life, Communications and Marketing, and Gift Development. So don't forget to join me on Twitter with the hashtag LEM Higher Ed. And Fran, let's get this session started.
All right. Thank you so much, Mallory. I just want to confirm that you can see the title slide, and we will get started.
Yep. We are ready to go.
All right. We're ready to go. As Mallory mentioned, hashtag for this is LEM Higher Ed. And the topic today is lifetime relationships and engagement management in higher education. Melly did a great job of introducing me, but let me do that one more time, and with the perspective, basically how I came to thinking and discussing and presenting on this particular topic. So I'm Fran. I'm a strategist, and I was a project manager at mStoner. I worked in alumni relations at SUNY Geneseo before that. Before that, I was in marketing and communications at Nazareth College. Before that, I was a graduate assistant at the University of Buffalo's Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and way before everything else, I was a lowly college student working in the residential life and athletics areas. And the reason I go that far back is just to give you some background on how many different areas of higher education I've worked in, and how over the years I've really come to appreciate how all those things are interconnected. So that's me. I'm really excited and very grateful to have Rob Zinkin here, and I will let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Fran. So glad to be here, and I think I come from a similar perspective, having different positions as a marketing director, an alumni director, a development director, also some experience working in athletics administration. So at different parts of the university, and now seeing how all of those could and should work more holistically. I'm Vice Chancellor for External Affairs at Indiana University East, which is a regional campus of Indiana University. And during the last 5 years, I've been with IU for 10 years, but 5 years at this campus, we've experienced a transformation and have grown enrollment, have been fortunate to grow enrollment by 85% over the last 5 years. So during this campus transformation, we've been able to also transform how we're organizationally structured and how we approach advancement and the whole life cycle. So it's really been fun to have that part of the overall changes and positive directions of our campus. And personally, it's something that I'm passionate about, and I think this topic is critical as we look to the future of higher ed, knowing that having this approach will certainly position us much better for the many changes that are taking place in the world of higher ed.
All right, thank you, Rob. All right, well, what's the crux of what we're talking about today? What is lifetime engagement management, lifetime relationship management? Customer relationship management is a term that's been around a while. Lifetime relationship management is kind of similar to that, and lifetime engagement management is something that's fairly new for higher ed. And so the way that this presentation is constructed is to break down lifetime engagement management into its component parts. So we will start with what do we mean by lifetime, then we'll go into what do we mean by lifetime engagement, and then finally talking about how we manage lifetime engagement. So the first component of this is lifetime. And what do we mean by lifetime? We mean relationships. It's all about the relationships that people have with your institution over their lifetimes. And these are really lifelong relationships. From the very moment that a prospective student gets the first thing from you in the mail or an email, they have a relationship with you. And that relationship, just like really interpersonal relationships that you might have at work or personally, evolve over time and become closer and farther away over time. So a prospect doesn't necessarily know who you are, and they might ask the question, do I know you? Someone who's actually opened or clicked on something has told you that you have their attention. Someone may call you up and say, hey, I really want to know more about you. Once they've visited, they're essentially saying that we should see more of each other. Once they've applied, they're telling you that they're only seeing you, although anyone who works in enrollment management or admissions can tell you that just an application is no guarantee, of course. But if they actually enroll and show up to day one of on campus, then they really are telling them that, no, I'm yours. I'm going to be here for the duration. And once they're part of the culture and have been on campus, they really can't imagine being without you, or at least that's what you hope that they're saying. These are very emotional relationships, and there's really some fairly poignant points within them. I mean, graduation for a lot of people is a really emotional time. People feel that higher education is a transformational experience for them, and you really built a really close bond with that individual. And so beyond that, alumni, especially recent alumni, are moving into a relationship with you in which they need your help and advice because the world is tough and the job market is tough. Over time, they establish themselves a little bit more and may actually fall out of communication with you. And, you know, so that's why I say here, we used to be so close. But later on in life, they may reconnect and want to give back to you either monetarily or with expertise, and really say that they want other people to have the same type of relationship that they've had with your institution. And so that's what I mean by lifelong relationships. And as a case in point, turn things over to Rob to talk a little bit about how that plays out at Indiana University.
Well, I love, Fran, that focus on relationships, because that's what this is all about, a more strategic approach to relationship management. And in our department at Indiana University East, our mission starts with advancing the university's mission. I mean, that's the core. And I think that makes it easier to find common ground with colleagues and across units when you're focusing at the broader institutional mission and institutional vision. Those 3 R's are the essence of what we do. We define in our units our mission as being advancing the mission of the university by strengthening the university's reputation, relationships, and resources. And from an integrated advancement perspective, ultimately we are charged with increasing the flow of vital resources into the institution. And those resources obviously come from direct impact on enrollment through recruitment and retention, and direct impact on development. The other point is that these three R's, they're hard to put into individual boxes. When you talk about reputation, relationships, and resources, everyone, no matter where you are, I think can latch on to those. It doesn't matter where they are on the organizational chart. All stages of the life cycle, from a staff perspective, should have ownership of these things: reputation, relationships, and resources. So again, that really defines the work that we do and how we define it within our unit in Indiana University East.
That's great, Rob. One of the points that I try to emphasize with everyone here is that at all points during this discussion, we want to think of our audiences as human beings, as people, and not just labels. And so that brings me kind of to one of the challenges that I think we all face in higher education right now, is that we're not seeing eye to eye with our constituencies on a lot of different points. We have different perspectives on ourselves and on each other. So to start things off, I mean, the perspective on them looks something like this. On the inside, we have all kinds of different labels for the people who we work with, depending on what stage of the life cycle they're in. So in enrollment, we'd call them a prospect or an open or an inquiry. We might say they're a visitor if they come for a campus tour, applicant, enrollee, matriculant, graduate, alumni, alumnus, donor, and bequest, right? But on the past slide and on this slide, really, through the perspective of our audiences, they only ever think of themselves as themselves. It's always them. It's always their perspective. So a lot of that internal jargon and lingo is getting in the way of what we're really trying to do, which is to build a relationship with that individual. On the flip side, the perspective that we have on ourselves and the perspective that they have are very different as well. So we've got the inside perspective on the right-hand side, where we're divided up into all these different departments: admissions, student life, bursar's office, financial aid, advising, academics, alumni. And yet, from the outside, our audience and that individual sees it as my university, and is always going to see it as my university, and always has seen it as my university, no matter who it is they're talking to. So ultimately, we have this relationship between me and my university that an individual has, and it's a one-to-one relationship. It's not a many-to-one relationship, even though there's many people involved from our standpoint, from our side. It really, to them, is a one-to-one relationship. And so, really can't emphasize enough that thinking of people as people and not necessarily labels as much as possible is really important as we try to set a framework for this discussion. Along with lifelong relationships, you have a lifelong reputation, and within any relationship, there's give and take, and there's a buildup of feelings and opinions and emotions, and essentially, ultimately, a reputation that you have, and every piece of that communication from the very beginning builds on or takes away from that reputation. And so, excuse me, you even have it taken to the next level beyond a person, and start to see how over the course of multiple people's lifetimes you have impressions and reputations that are being passed down. So you might have a student who goes to school who then becomes a parent and then says to their child, this institution was an amazing place for me, or you know what, this institution wasn't an amazing place for me, or we have a family legacy and have sent so and so many people to this institution. But understanding that people may actually enter this relationship as a prospect having already, having baggage, essentially, having already developed some opinion about you before they even walk in the door, because they are part of a generational legacy. So that's the idea of lifetime, or even multiple lifetimes. Let's take it to the next step and talk about lifetime engagement and what that entails. So over the course of all of these different stages, you've got many, many different channels that people are going to be communicated through. You could have a phone conversation with someone They may read your view book. They may be part of a planned event. They're going to, of course, receive lots of email and mail from you. They may see you in person during a tour. They may visit your website. And they're going to hear a lot about your institution word of mouth from family and friends, neighbors, people who influence them outside of the institution. In the same way, they're going to interact with a lot of different individuals. An admissions counselor, the president may make a speech that they hear. Major gift officer may be asking them for money. The tour guide that's on that tour, web content manager. But the idea is that pretty much anybody can have an influence on your reputation. Some of whom are under your employ, but others that you don't have any control over, other than indirectly what their thought on the institution is and what your reputation with them is. So it's collective, and there's lots of different channels. And Rob, why don't you talk about some of the channels that you have at Indiana University East and how all those tend to work together?
Yeah, it's much easier to look when you lay it out that way, Fran, to look uncoordinated than to look coordinated. So it is a challenge, and we know that advancement or marketing communications, whatever your area is, we know that the work that you do is profoundly multi-channel. So here I always think of mStoner's first law of branding, that everything is connected to everything else. So everything has to work in concert with all other channels around unified institutions and messages that can be tailored to the needs of your audience based on that particular channel. So and maybe we could get into some of these specifics in different channels at the end in the Q&A, but I think the overall point is that lifetime engagement is a people strategy, as you said, people first. It's a people strategy that then can enhance the effectiveness of your communication tools and communication tactics.
We know that within that circle, right, that all is not always as coordinated as we'd like it to be. So, you know, if we were all sitting in a room together, I would ask you to all raise your hands if you could name off the top of your head one of the departments, or maybe just there is that one department where every time you see something come out of that department, everyone just kind of does a collective wince to say, oh, here we go again. You know, whether it's because they're putting it out on a front page newsletter, whether they're putting out Comic Sans. It's something that drives you crazy because it's from the campus, but it also affects your overall reputation. And I think one of the things that we fall into that can be really an easy thing to fall into that's not the right thing is to think of all the people who work in other departments as not representing the campus, right? So really, our audiences don't care who on campus they're receiving the communication from. They just care about how high quality it is, how much it speaks to them, and everything. So you could be a CASE award-winning marketing group on your campus and do things that are really, really awesome all the time. But no one in your audiences knows that, and nor do they really care. And if they receive 3 communications from you over the course of the year, and one of them is a CASE award-winning newsletter, and 2 of them happen to be really low quality, poorly conceived brochures, their overall impression of the campus is going to be negative, or it's at least going to be kind of neutral. And so the idea here is to plant the seed that we all need to work together. And if you have departments on your campus that are lagging behind or could use some help, offer to help them. If you're the award-winning part of the campus and you know what you're doing and you're a marketing expert and you have expertise to share, it's better to raise everybody else up in these cases than it is to simply point fingers and say, well, you know, they always do crappy stuff, but we're really well put together, because the ultimate point is that you're all sharing that reputation and your audiences really don't care. So along the same lines, it's everybody's job, but it's nobody's job, right? The problem with this is we don't actually have anybody who is a lifetime engagement manager. That's not their full-time job. They're not running around trying to make sure everyone's talking to each other. So it ends up being all of our jobs, but it's not necessarily part of our job description to go do that. And it's really easy to just take a look at your job description and do just what you need to do every day and not think outside the box and say, okay, what other things could I be doing? But it's really important, because the more everyone's doing that, the better the reputation of the campus is going to be overall. So I would suggest that we do have a philosophy of no more us versus them. Let's stop being divisive inside campus and really start working together to make sure that all of these communications and these relationships are as positive as they can be. So, Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences at Indiana, starting with this particular quote?
Yes, and I think it really reinforces that in higher ed, we tend to organize ourselves in functional silos for audiences that really look at us holistically. So, as you said, never assume that something isn't your job. It's always your job. We all represent the university, and in the eyes of the stakeholder, we are the university, no matter what our business card says or what our title is. We are the university. And that's the main point, that we're being audience-centric versus being institution-centric. And it's so easy in our work, as you said, in our day-to-day activities and what our job description is, to be institution-centric in the work that we do. So on a personal level, no matter who you're dealing with, you are the university at that moment. You're the university. And from a marketing standpoint, we may be great in the areas of brand marketing and in direct marketing, but I think this gets into the area of experience marketing, which is much more difficult to manage because, as you said, we don't control everything. We don't control all the touch points. So you have to create a culture that recognizes this and values this. So, for us at Indiana University East, it's a work in progress. We're not exactly where we need to be, but we're farther along than we were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because a culture isn't created overnight. And so it's a culmination of lots and lots of little things that slowly but surely start to change that culture.
And Rob, that's one of the reasons why I'm just loving that you're able to join me on with this presentation, because what Rob and his team are doing at Indiana University is feet on the ground work in this area to make this happen. So this isn't just kind of pie in the sky thinking or aspirational or theoretical. I mean, this type of thing is happening at campuses around the U.S., and I think that Rob and his team are a great example of having this as a focus, as for long-term strategy. And I applaud him and his team for all the good work that they've been doing. So let's take a look then at what our ultimate goals are when we're doing lifetime engagement. Really, it's consistency, right? I talked about earlier where you've got departments who may not be pulling their weight, or maybe they're just understaffed, and then maybe they just need some advice or some help. And because of that, you don't have a consistent quality. So one of the goals is to have consistent quality coming out of every messaging platform that you have, so that there isn't any disparity in your audience's mind, and they're not getting things that are really polished followed by things that really aren't. The next goal is consistency of customer service. And Rob, you had some good points talking prior to this presentation that I'd love to have you share about the culture that you're trying to engender there in the end.
Sure, Fran. I do think customer service plays into all of this, and I know in higher ed, customer service, that can be a dirty word or phrase among faculty, but the onus is on us to make it relevant for those with whom we work. And we know that every contact, every touch point is part of that overall engagement process. So there has to be a mentality that you're responsible for addressing it or fixing it, even if you're not the cause of the problem. You didn't break it, but you're responsible to fix it. It's so easy to point to another area on campus, and I know I always hate it when I overhear a colleague say, well, that's the office of so and so, and I think that's something that happens frequently in our world in higher ed. And back to the earlier point that we're all on Team University, but we have all these crazy internally focused titles and department names. And it's interesting if you were to just call around on your campus just to hear how other offices answer the phone. What do they say? And do students and others know what office of the bursar is, or what office of the development is? What exactly does that mean to our key audiences? Our unit at IU East is external affairs, and at another institution it was external relations. And one time I can remember someone asked me, so who exactly do you have relations with? And I thought that was pretty scary, but again, we just take for granted that what this is, and we assume everybody knows what it means. But They don't. They just know that we're Indiana University East, and that's such a simple point, but such a difficult point to keep in mind.
Definitely, and you know, it's funny. Titling tends to be one of those areas where you know, I actually can remember having competitions to try to find who on campus had the longest, most, you know, difficult to get through title, because as these titles grow and change over time, they can get a little bit unwieldy as you become part of many departments and subdepartments and initiatives and things like that. So yeah, I think the important point is that, you know, there's people behind these titles, and there's people on the other side that really need to work together, and that shouldn't be the focus. So another goal, in addition to consistency of customer service, is consistency of message, and this is you know, working together to make sure that what you're saying, the facts that you have out there are consistent, and you're not giving any misinformation or two different pieces of information that are speaking to the same area. And you know, we can all think of times when we've had particular, you know, pricing, let's say, as part of a view book, and then on the website it's a little bit different, and that can be a real headache for everybody if the message isn't consistent and the information isn't consistent. The other piece is consistency of data, and this can also be a real challenge for everyone. Different departments have different lists of data. Different departments call different things differently. I mean, even something as simple as you know, what titling you use to address people. So that is a goal of lifetime engagement management, is to make sure that we have consistency of data. And then ultimately, all of these things kind of brew up to what I call consistency of affinity. So if you're doing all of these well, if you're being consistent in all these other areas, then you're going to have positive, specific, and actionable affinity. Now, let me break that out a little bit. So people are going to feel good about your campus, so that is positive affinity. But you're going to have specific data about those people and why it is that they're feeling good. Not just general feelings of goodwill, but also that, you know, this person is a former basketball player and they really love the basketball team, or, you know, this person was part of the Poets Council and they are still really involved in that and would love to connect with students. So the specific affinity is something that I think, you know, that's the hook that get people really involved in to keep that relationship really strong. And then lastly, affinity that is actionable, that ultimately will result in the person taking some kind of action. I mean, whether it's donating money or time or expertise, or just being, you know, making some phone calls for a reunion event. That's the ultimate goal, is that you'll have that type of consistency across all those individuals. So those are the goals. Are there any solutions out there, technologically speaking, that can help us to realize those goals? Well, the truth is that there's not too many that actually focus on the entire cycle, the entire lifetime. Most of the solutions today focus on one or two stages of the cycle. To give some examples, and I'm giving some examples that I actually think do a good job. I'm just making the point that they are focused on a particular phase. So you look at a company like Integral, works with enrollment and retention. A company like Evertrue has like a mobile app that links with LinkedIn and allows alumni to engage that way, but focuses solely on the alumni space. And then iModules, which focuses mainly on advancement and fundraising. So there's lots of solutions, just none that actually have a solution for the entire life cycle. However, that's starting to change, and there are systems that are emerging that are focused on the entire cycle. And one of them, Talisma, actually has build lifetime relationships as their tagline on their website. So they're definitely in this space thinking about how they can solve that. And Rob, you've worked with Talisma now for a little while, so it'd be great to hear your thoughts on how that's been going.
Yes, we've just started down this path university-wide with Alumni. So not only our campus, but all campuses of Indiana University, to create a lifetime CRM. And we're going one step at a time. We're not there yet. We've just begun with admissions. The admissions piece is now in place, and that's the first piece. But I'm really excited about the potential for all of this, because we're moving from basically three separate systems, an admissions system, student information system, and then an alumni foundation information system into one. And currently, those three systems don't talk to each other, and will evolve into eventually one system. And we have so many examples of people who don't fit into one of those systems, but they're key stakeholders. It could be a local legislator. It could be a business owner who's an internship site host. It could be a local school superintendent. They may not be an alum. They may not be a donor, or hopefully not yet a donor. So we can't plug them in anywhere. And but the thing is, we know that a relationship is deepened as someone has more points of contact within the university. So it's great if someone in the community, for instance, has multiple points of contact with our institution, with my office, with me, with someone on my who's part of my staff, with a faculty member, with others. You know, going back to the point of the internship coordinator, right now there's no place for her to use this system. She doesn't fit into the admissions, the student services, or the alumni foundation model, so her contacts aren't tracked or inputted in any way. We've not figured that out, but we think that the lifetime CRM will allow us to get her and her work connected into all of this, just as an example. So you know, down the road, if I ask that business owner for a donation, I will have the whole scope of that person's relationship with the institution. And certainly that will allow us to be much more personal and much more impactful in our communications and in our relationship building. I'm not really a fan of the phrase cradle to endowment, but that is essentially what we're trying to capture. And again, I'm very excited about the potential with Talisma. We've just begun, and we'll be excited to, at some point down the road, report back on how it's going.
Yeah, I for one am really excited to hear how things go, and excited that there are emerging technologies that are recognizing this need and are starting to address it. So we all know, however, that technology is not a panacea. It is not always is never going to solve all our problems, especially if it's just technology for technology's sake. And so I think, again, re-emphasizing that the solution here, at least today and to continue into the future, is to start with people in mind and then move into the technology. And so we're talking about people tools and some familiar things such as branding and messaging guides that can be shared with the rest of the campus so that they understand, what types of things we're trying to say, what are the major talking points of the campus. And so if they, get a phone call from somebody out of the blue, they may be able to speak to those things consistent to what you want them to. Same thing, training people and making sure that they understand the overall goals of that consistency and quality and customer service, etc. And open communication and collaboration are huge, are key to this being successful. And so the last piece is talking about how do we actually manage this. So talking about it a little bit aspirationally, theoretically, but what can we do to start today to make this better at each of our institutions? So looking at the challenges here is that we've got a disconnect at each of these transition points. And so in this diagram, you can see the arrows are essentially the transition points. We've got an admissions office that is doing an awesome job with engaging with people. We've got a student affairs office that's doing an awesome job engaging with people. We've got alumni and development who are doing an awesome job engaging with their constituencies, but they may not be transferring the information and all that good, all those good relationships and communications they've had from one to each other, from one to another. And especially important is that alumni and development may not be getting things from admissions and student affairs, but they also may not be returning the favor and going back and saying, here's all this information we've got about alumni. And there's, and that alumni can be one of the biggest drivers of selling your school and getting people in the front door and showing and living, breathing, storytelling glory, all the great things that could happen if you went to this institution, like, and look at how successful all these people have been, and look at what you could become. Hear it from the horse's mouth. So that's we're having disconnects though at those, and so and part of it's because we have silos of awareness, as Rob alluded to earlier. Part of it is that we have silos of data, and really the solution is that we need to change the way we're doing things. We need to change the approach we're taking across campus and individually in order to solve these challenges. So there's a couple different ways that we can approach this, a couple different frameworks on change. And one is change. The first is change from the top down. And I think, Rob, your approach is one of the best examples out there. So why don't you talk a little bit about the Indiana University East approach?
Sure, I appreciate that. I do think organizational structure can play a significant role in this and be much more conducive to a lifetime engagement mentality. And at Indiana University East, we are organizationally structured to maximize integration and collaboration across all phases of the life cycle, and as you pointed out, all transition points of the life cycle. So within external affairs, these are our offices and primary target audiences within each. So communications and marketing with prospective students, campus life with current students, alumni relations, obviously with alumni, and development with donors. And previously, all of these were separate. Communications and marketing was its own entity, and at that time, it did not have web as part of it. Web was separated as well. Alumni and development were separated, and then campus life was its own entity, working with student affairs, academic affairs. So for us, campus life means student activities, student organizations, and student government association. And we love that direct access to students. I mean, first of all, it's why we're all here, why we work in higher ed for our students. But it helps us connect the dots for this whole life cycle. And no matter the audience, the message, the channel, or the staff member, we're able to have a common guiding vision in what we do. And I haven't seen any other advancement models with campus life in them. And I'm not saying that other institutions should do this, you should do that. It could be a disaster. Who knows? It could be a disaster at your college, or just not be the right fit for any number of reasons. For us, it works. And I think that's the whole point here, is that there's an opportunity to do something different. The Contrarian's Guide to Leadership is a great book by Steve Sample, the President Emeritus of USC, and it has one of my all-time favorite quotes, that you can't copy your way to excellence. Rather, true excellence can only be achieved through original thinking and unconventional approaches. And this whole area of lifetime engagement is just ripe for being unconventional and challenging the status quo. And this structure is how we've gone about that.
I think it's bold and daring and pretty awesome, Rob. Perfect. To be perfectly honest, and it might not work for everybody, but how are you going to know if it works unless you actually are brave enough to try? So I think it's awesome that you're doing that, and I'd love to hear from people about other initiatives, if you have them, that you're trying, other approaches to this that you're trying in the comments and questions or afterward, because I think the more we can talk about new ideas and innovative ideas in this respect, the better off we're all going to be in the end. So just to add one additional thought there from top-down change, I've often thought that in order for there to be enough leverage in this case, so that you had executive buy-in and leadership, you really need, ultimately would be great to have someone sitting at the cabinet level with equal weight as a chief financial officer, a chief marketing officer, and really a chief information officer is one idea of an individual who could have all this entire type of initiative underneath them across entire campus or a series of campuses if it's a statewide collection. So borrowing a little bit from terminology in the corporate world, these are the types of positions I think could potentially exist in the future and help to drive some of these lifetime engagement initiatives. The other framework, the other approach, and this is the one which I think for all of you is the most important is the one from the bottom up. We're not always, not everyone is as fortunate to have someone like Rob or an initiative such as Indiana has today, and so it can be really easy to just say, oh well, this isn't going to happen where I work. It's just not the right situation. But the truth is that you can start today. This does start with each individual, and I'm going to give you a couple ideas for how you can start to tackle these problems yourself and with the groups that you work with. So the problem being silos of awareness, the solution is really, really simple. Have coffee with somebody. Start small and just grab coffee with somebody who you haven't talked to on campus before. Pick a department where you have no idea what they do. Go have coffee, have a conversation, tell them what you do, and then have them return the favor. So these are small things that you can do, and maybe schedule one coffee a week or one every other week, and just go down the employee list and figure out who you don't know about and just start making those connections, because that's going to start snowballing all this other stuff. Start to think a little bit bigger, Rob. You've got some really good examples that you use about internal outreach and knowledge sharing.
Yes, and it's a matter of bringing people together, getting people around the same table, and this isn't a new idea by any stretch, but something that we do is having monthly TED Talks, and each staff member in our external affairs unit is assigned a month. They pick the TED Talk and then lead the subsequent discussion. We have a 45-minute brown bag, 20-minute video, 20-minute discussion, and we've used that as a way to bring other people into the mix, and have tried to invite other staff and other departments to that, because it's more of a non-threatening environment. It's more casual. It's not an official meeting, and we have all levels of staff who are leading the discussion, and then the discussions often are broader and are on bigger picture topics. So we end up finding linkages between our areas, and we try to do the same thing with book discussions that we have within our department, but then trying to branch out and include others in that as well. And I think it's a matter of just trying to figure out ways, or think of ways that you can add value to other departments as well. Whether it's as simple as being a cheerleader for another department, or as simple as volunteering for another event, say an admissions recruitment event. But starting small and starting with those kinds of simple gestures that you mentioned, Fran. But there's so much potential. We always try to be very intentional to get a representative from our area, from our unit, on search and screen committees for every professional staff position search on campus, and in on faculty searches whenever we can, but certainly all professional staff positions, because it's a great way to become an insider in another area, to learn that department and its specific challenges and its specific opportunities in a very intimate way. Thinking big in terms of shared ownership and success. Again, this gets to a bigger culture within your institution of being transparent with data and being transparent with goals, so that when you, for instance, have an increase in first to second year retention rates, that everyone feels a part of that, and that it's celebrated as an institutional success, not just a department success. So, finding ways that you plug into larger institutional goals. In advancement in our group, we try to take as much ownership as we can in retention figures. We're not the only impact on that, but we are part of that. And so again, trying to have that shared ownership in institutional goals, and then celebrating those successes institution-wide as well.
Another big idea I think I really like that TED Talk idea a lot, and I think that approach is a little bit maybe less intimidating than this slide here. The idea that eventually, if you've built up a relationship through the ideas that Rob shared, you could have an exchange of information, like a regular departmental meeting that you go to. That's not your department. You go to someone else's departmental meeting just to sit in and kind of be able to weigh in where it makes sense on collaborative opportunities, and to just get some takeaways and be in the know about what someone else is up to. Taking that a step further and thinking really big, a couple ideas that may be crazy, maybe not. Hybrid employees, somebody whose job description requires them to work in more than one area. So your time is split during the week, and you work in different areas on projects that are, by their nature, surrounding a lifetime model. And then in the same vein, the idea that we would want to eventually get to a place where we would have holistic training and holistic management. And this is, again, another thing that I've kind of borrowed from the corporate middle management idea, that essentially, you start a new job, and instead of starting that job day one, you spend the first 6 months in 6 different places for a month. So let's say your eventual role is going to be the director of career services, and you are starting this new job, and the first month you spend working with the enrollment team. The second month you spend working with the advancement team, maybe alumni is next, student affairs, et cetera, et cetera. And so by the time you are starting your role as a career services director, you've had a chance to not just talk to, but work with and on behalf of the other areas that you are going to need to work with in order to have successful lifetime engagement management. So pretty radical, probably not altogether too easy to do, but an idea of how we could end up in a place where we have that type of training. And that's the extreme of actually doing it for 1 month at a time. But I think we could also just have a much shorter sprint of that. Maybe it's, instead of a month, it's a week at the beginning of a job. Or for people who are already in the jobs, having weeks set aside where they're essentially working for another department and having an exchange, so that we're not taking away. It's a zero-sum game. Someone from one department is essentially swapping roles with someone from another department. So that's one pretty radical idea about how we could try to break down those silos.
And Fran, if I could
yeah,
chime in on that, because I do think that is a big idea, and it reminds me of an op-ed piece in the New York Times back in August from Jason Fried, and he talked about how he gave everyone at 37 Signals the month of June to work on whatever they wanted, to explore their own ideas, interesting projects, whatever, and how that proved to be ultra productive and generated lots of new ideas for the company, and again, how that similar type of approach could work in higher ed, and we haven't done it yet, thinking about it for this summer, but could we have in our unit send out our folks to different departments across campus for a 1-week period, probably start with a 1-week period, but eventually a 1 or 2 week period to do just exactly what you said. And again, I think changing the culture, that would be a big step in achieving that.
That's awesome that you're already working towards those types of things, Rob. All right, let's see. We've got about 11 minutes left, so I'm going to move along through this part a little bit more quickly. But the other issue is silos of data, right? So how are we going to tackle these with the idea from the bottom up? So from the bottom up, each of us individually can just start really small. Make a list of all the data you need. Not the data that you can get, the data that you'd love to have. Make a wish list of everything you could possibly use when you're talking to people. And then figure out if anybody actually has that. And if they don't have it, figure out who should have it and go talk to them about the fact that they should have it and see if it's something that they can start collecting now. So you may be helping to prepare yourself for 10 years down the road, but at least you're starting to collect that information now. On the flip side, identify what data you have and who needs it, and then what data you need and who could offer it. So it's reciprocal. Offer the information up first, and you're much more likely to get information in return. Thinking about one story from when I was working at Geneseo, working in the alumni office, trying to figure out what kind of data I had on that specific affinity stuff. So what clubs and activities people had been part of, what extracurriculars they did, and realizing with kind of a little bit of horror that the only way that we have been getting any of this information was scraping the yearbooks for years and years and years, and that there wasn't any record in student affairs of any of the club and activity lists and rosters and stuff like that. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like if we could just talk to student affairs and have them aware of the fact that at the end of the year to just shoot us a copy of the class roster or the club roster, that alone 5 years down the road could be a huge benefit when we're trying to organize targeted messaging and targeted events towards people on the alumni end. So this is the type of eventual result that sharing of data could lead to. So start thinking a little bit bigger than that, and you've got institution-wide data definitions. This gets tough because there's so many systems out there, and there's so many different technologies that they're built on. But ultimately, we're trying to arrive at a lifetime system identity, right? We're in this is kind of what Tilnisma, I think, is hoping to do eventually, aspiring to do, is that you would only ever have to log in one time as a prospective student, and your relationship and the information available to you or being targeted towards you would change over time, but you wouldn't have to continually get dropped out of a system and then have to re-up and put all of your demographic information in over and over and over again, which can get really irritating, and quite frankly, a lot of people will just kind of drop out of the relationship cycle at certain points because they get frustrated with how many different systems they have to use. So that's a really big idea on the data side of things. So just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, what is the potential? I just think there's a ton of potential here. Rob, you mentioned potential a few times. There's a ton of potential here to do good things and make things better. And I think if we start to do a better job of lifetime engagement management and lifecycle management, we're going to start to realize a better reputation. We're going to start to have more strategic communications because we're going to have better data and understand what communications have taken place in the past. We're going to have more involved alumni because of those previous two things. Rob, you're in particular aware of more successful fundraising from using things like this?
Absolutely. I mean, it's obvious that a student who drops out, never becomes an alum. And so, one of the questions is, again, where does this, if it doesn't come from the top, where does it come from? And I think advancement is really poised to be a strong proponent for this because advancement has the most to gain. The decision to be a donor or not to be a donor is being formed before a student first steps foot on campus even. So that's why I think advancement should get involved and get involved from the beginning. At our institution, we've had our students begin a senior class challenge 3 years ago around fundraising, and that was developed organically. Was not staff driven, but I think was developed organically because of the integrated structure that we have, and has now grown into a week-long spirit of philanthropy with a variety of student-led activities. But I agree. The end game is fundraising. A gift to the campus is the ultimate measure of satisfaction as a student and the outcome of the student experience. So I would strongly advocate for advancement becoming much more involved in this.
As would I. Definitely, having worked in that area, the potential gains there are greater than anywhere else. Not that there aren't gains everywhere else, but that they stand to benefit the most from all of this. So on the flip side, what's the threat to not doing a good job of lifetime engagement management? Well, not being ready for the coming higher ed apocalypse, and we're running short on time, and I will not get into that, but that may be a future discussion. If you've ever heard Mark Greenfield talk about the flattening of higher ed, that's kind of what I'm referring to there. But basically being prepared for new challenges, market challenges that exist out there, competition from places like for-profit institutions. I feel that this is a model that is flexible and can grow into a way to cushion against those types of threats. But more closely tied to this, disconnected or lost relationships over time, upset alumni, really just the flip side of what we just said, the possibilities were less donors and donations, weakened reputation overall. So the takeaway here is, yes, I've been looking at Twitter a little bit, and yes, I want you to think. I want you to think about all the ways these things work. Think about the way you work, think about the way other people work, and how you can do it differently. But put yourself in your audience's shoes every day, and it shouldn't be too hard because a lot of us, I'm guessing, have been through all of these steps at some point. We're all alums of somewhere, right? So we've been through it. You can think about back to when you were in those stages too, and that can help to frame the way that you are talking about this and the way you're talking to people. Your audience sees you as a single entity, so start acting like one, and really keep in mind that every single applicant is a future alumnus, and so work with admissions, work with residential life. Every sophomore is your next could be your next board member. Every junior could be your next major donor, so work with student affairs. And every senior could be your next alumni mentor, so work with career services, because over time, it's the students you have now who are going to become the leaders of tomorrow, and it's really important that everyone be involved at every stage of the game. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen. I want to thank Rob again for taking the time to put this together with me and giving some awesome insights. And I know we were hoping for about 8 minutes, 10 minutes for questions. We've left 3.5, but I think we might be able to go over a couple if Mallory allows it. And so open to questions from you guys, and can certainly follow up afterward through any of these resources, any of these channels that we have available. So
awesome. Fran and Rob, that was a fantastic presentation, and I'll tell you, the back channel on Twitter has been buzzing with some really great takeaways and points and conversation around different things that you've been talking about. So I know the two of you are probably going to run right over to Twitter as soon as this wraps up, and you'll be excited about what you see there. We do have a few questions, and so I will run through those in just a second, but I do want to remind everyone as we're getting close to 3 o'clock that once you decide to log off of this webinar, please make sure you take that very short survey after you log out. It just really helps us give feedback to the presenters and to see what you thought about today's presentation and what you're looking for in future presentations. So pretty please take that very short survey. So Fran, our first question is kind of broad, but I'm hoping that you might be able to address it. What if our viewers do not have a culture of sharing at their current institution? What can they do?
I think it can be tough to be the only person in the room who's thinking of this stuff and who's talking about this stuff, but again, it has to start somewhere, right? I mean, if it's not, what better place for it to start than with you? If it doesn't exist anywhere else, then take those simple steps. Have coffee with people, make a list, and don't worry about the big picture ideas for the time being. Just let those small steps kind of accumulate and get other people on board. And after you've had coffees, have the other person make a date with somebody else, and let it grow organically. It can really be a type of almost like a grassroots movement type of thing, if you don't have an infrastructure in place, which I know a lot of people don't.
Rob, besides your institution, are there any other examples of institutions that are doing this?
Not that I know of. That's a great question. I know there, at least I haven't found other institutions that are aligned quite like we are. But I think there are some institutions who are doing some good things, and institutions who have at least integrated themselves in the areas of alumni development and communications and marketing, creating an advancement model from those three main units, and I know several institutions have that structure, but I haven't seen much in terms of, or anything really in terms of lifetime engagement, because it gets back to that the slide about how it's everyone's job, but it's no one's job, and no one truly has ownership over that entire life cycle, and no one wakes up every day thinking about all phases of the life cycle. So I don't know. I mean, it could be my institution, it could be your institution, or someone else's. But again, this whole thing is very conceptual. We don't have a lot of great examples. The challenges are greater than the than the action items, so to speak. So I think lots of people can make lots of good things happen by taking those first steps. It's a challenge if you're at a larger institution. It's a challenge if you don't have that culture of sharing. but it's got to be something where you're in it for the long haul, because that's what relationship management is all about.
Yeah,
Fran, do you have any examples?
I've got a couple. It's funny. Just in the last week, I was actually asked by a gentleman who works from Newcastle University in Britain to give him some resources on this, and he presented with someone from Oxford University about a month ago for Case Europe. So I'm trying to reach out to them because there are some European institutions who have done some things. So stay tuned, because I plan to write about this in the near future and share some of the insights that they had on what concrete examples of some institutions across the pond trying to tackle this. So I don't have specifics today, but there's a few new initiatives that are looking pretty interesting.
Awesome.
It would be great to have more examples, yes.
Definitely. It would be. Agreed. Another one of our audience members asks, how would you suggest getting the faculty on board with the concept of acting like one entity?
I think making it human is the most important thing. I think faculty often come from the standpoint that, you know, they're teaching these students, and they're trying to make them think differently and have some kind of an influence on their lives and change the way they think. And so I think if you approach it from the standpoint that you have the students' best interests in mind here, that's a good way to start with faculty. Just because if you come across as too institutionally heavy-handed, and you're saying we've got this initiative going on, and we really need to collaborate, and when you start using a lot of internal jargon and make it very business-like, then it really can backfire. But no one, everyone's invested in the well-being of students and their ultimate success, but no one is as close to that day-to-day as faculty. And so I think that approaching it from a human perspective and understanding that all of these people, whether they are students today or they were students 25 years ago, or they might be students next year, at some point we're going to be touched by faculty, and that's what their role to play is really the most important one, and that you're just trying to extend all the the great relationships that they establish beyond just the 4 years that people are going to be there. So I would say try to couch it that way as faculty.
Rob, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
I would agree with Fran. I think faculty, again, they have the most important role, and I think it's not so much getting them involved in this. It's just getting them involved in whatever your position is or whatever you do. Opening up the lines of communication with faculty and starting there. Recognizing the important role that they have to play, and all these things about reaching out to other departments and other staff members. There's no reason the same can't happen with reaching out to other faculty members, and again being cheerleaders for faculty and the work that they do. So I think demonstrating that examples of lifetime relationships that have been beneficial to the institution that they might not be aware of or recognize. Faculty who are very involved on the advancement side, I think, are more likely to see the value in this. So I think the advancement office can play a key role, and alumni office can play a key role as well.
Great. Well, Fran and Rob, thank you so much once again for spending some time to talk about this very important issue today. And everyone, thank you for attending. Please, just a reminder, take that very short survey after you log out, and don't forget to sign up for our next webinar on social media integration on December 6th. You can go directly to mStoner.com, and you'll see a link to sign up right on the homepage. So thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.